everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online, and our newest co-sponsor Cardamajigs.com, presenting Cubamajigs. These durable, scratch-resistant plastic cases are perfect for cubes, sideboards, and more, with new designs every Monday. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Greetings.
Ruben Bressler.
Good day, sir. How are you doing?
Doing great. We had a heck of a pre-show for those who happen to be patrons. It was a fun one. There was ups and downs, lefts and rights. It was exciting. I think
it was very us, very peak us.
Yeah, it was total Magic Mike's going on there. That said,
we advertised the pre-show during our regular show now.
What's wrong with that?
Just asking.
Which you can get access to for just $5 a month. Okay. Look, right. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 villains. Ruben?
Well, this week's winner comes from Facebook, and Gabriel Michael Mahaffey had the winning comment, who wrote, "My honorable mention is Marysil."
Marysil. It's like Clarisil.
Marysil.
I think you might have misspelled it.
Use it on your skin. Marysil. He was the headmaster of the Conclave of Legends, if the previous headmaster was his teacher, and he imprisoned in a cage that siphoned his powers. He brought Joda into his wings, who then was his downfall. Not even death could stop him from wreaking havoc. He had a ring that he imbued his soul into. This ring possessed several main characters, like Limdul and Jaya. And of course, recently was printed as Marysil the Pretender, most recently in Commander 2017.
Oh, well, he certainly spelled it correctly, and I was wrong. Marysil the Pretender is actually right there. Sweet.
There it is.
Cool.
Yeah, and puts cage counters on things and can gain abilities. It's a weird creature to have as your commander for sure.
Cool one though.
I mean, yeah, that's super neat. Well, congratulations to Gabriel on that one.
Hit
us up on a social media platform that Aaron has hopefully not blocked you from, and we'll get you your $50 gift certificate. You never know. Roll a die.
Really don't.
We're not really sure. Sometimes I might be. I mean, who knows? Anyway, that said, thank you so much to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring that giveaway. And again, we will give away another one next week to the top commenter for our top 10 warriors. Now that's.
Are you on LinkedIn? Can they contact you on LinkedIn?
I am not on LinkedIn, no, but I do say warrior. Going back to our pre-show.
So. Warrior.
Warrior.
Not a warrior.
I don't have the Coke bottles to clink together for the warrior.
Nice. That said, we are talking about our top 10 warriors, whatever sort of scope that may be. Ruben always kind of tends towards the pro level, PT level
competitive stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, sometimes I look more historical. They were the cards I like.
It's a little bit weird for that though, because even though there are so many warriors,
over 600.
Over 600. I think it's the second or third most common creature type across all of Magic. But there aren't a ton that have had a lot of competitive success.
It's true.
There's a ton of, for example, like monks that have had competitive tournament success. A lot of soldiers, which we've done before.
Clerics.
Elves, goblins, clerics. Warriors kind of got a little bit of the short end of the stick. They aren't a ton of competitive warriors.
And yet, 4 of my selections are higher on someone else's list. And yes, the villain from last week was Evan's whining. Thank you very much.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I'm whining. A little unhappy about it. It's fine.
Give it some more time.
Evan Irwine.
Wow. All right. Let's move here to number 10. Let's get this list kicked off. Ruben, what was your number 10 warrior?
Number 10 is the only hire I have on my list.
Okay, then. You don't have one. Aaron, do you have a number 10?
I do. My number 10 can go into the why file because I was going through Gatherer and I had to do a double take because I saw this card and I thought maybe I was reading it incorrectly. I thought maybe it had been reprinted, maybe something had changed. Oh no, it's been reprinted once and I wasn't incorrect. My number 10 is Indomitable Ancients. So Indomitable Ancients is from Morningtide. It's 2 colorless and 2 white, a white tree folk warrior that is nothing but a 2/10 creature, 2 power and 10 toughness, and it's rare. Why?
Because Doran. Because high alert. Because assault formation. Because
I'm thinking at first I thought maybe like it had been downshifted, or maybe it was uplifted, or there was some weird freaky clause to it. No, it's just this is how it was intended.
do you think there was an accident and why they got Sir Mix-a-Lot to be in their commercial?
Oh boy,
because he likes big butts. You see what I did there? I'm gonna connect the dots for you. Connect them.
Look at indomitable ancients.
All right, I'll allow it.
It's kind of weird that it's a warrior. You're right. That is a strange one.
I bet it's one of those rap guys top decks. That's what I think.
Okay.
Wow. All right. That was a fun one, at least because they tried to make it work. They tried to be like, really, this is a 4-mana 10/10, and we're like,
right,
no. But it's
right.
cute, but
you gotta work so hard to make it 10 power.
In Magical Christmas Land, you're Doran into this guy, and then they just scoop it up because they have nothing. You're playing against a little fishy. It goes around a little bowl. It's great. It's terrific.
But it's also, I've played a couple of these in draft, for example, and it's just a stone wall. I'm not above playing a Kami of Old Stone or.
Yeah, but how would you feel if you opened that up and that was your rare?
It would not feel good.
Yeah.
Now, as I recall, because Pro Tour Valencia was the only Pro Tour they canceled day one because they flooded the entire spot. You can see a Magic show all about it.
Yeah.
I got to play in that Pro Tour because that was part of winning the storyteller vote for the Invitational. So that was cool, right? I got to play. I have pro points. Haha.
Work.
Because they put so many rounds in that day 2, quote unquote, I believe this was my record. And I'm
210?
I'm not kidding. Now, I will say
it's tough to go Indomitable Ancients in any tournament.
It's tough. It's really tough. And because they played like the last 4 rounds on Sunday morning or something silly.
Right.
But so it's like every game went to 3 games, so I felt good about it. And they were tight and close as it were, but still Indomitable Ancients that tournaments, and that makes me sad.
So if anyone's listening, if you want Evan to sign a card for you, give him an Indomitable Ancients.
Indomitable Ancients. That's not a. I mean, that one's a fine one. I mean, you should probably just have a Giant Solifuge laying around or a Spectral Procession. But
wow, this card's like over $3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, it's
that
old.
High alert assault formation garbage.
Yep. Somebody's got to play those Arcades decks or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Well, look, my number 10 is a Pauper All-Star. This card has been played basically in the format ever since it has existed. Our friend Kendra Smith would certainly approve. I loved finding, more than almost any other type of card, I enjoyed finding warriors that made more warriors. I felt that was one of the hallmarks, the tenets of being a really powerful and impactful warrior that you can think about and call back on. Because, back in the world of Lorwyn, thankfully this card's been reprinted a ton of times. Otherwise, I can imagine it would be a fairly expensive common. But back in Lorwyn, there was the elf theme. And I don't think this is going to be the last card from Lorwyn we're going to talk about. I mean, hell, we just talked about a Morningtide card. But for me, it's all about the elves. And the elves have a terrific option in the common slot for Lys Alana Huntmaster.
Yep.
Lys Alana Huntmaster is 2 green, 2 generic mana for a 3/3 common elf warrior that whenever you play an elf spell, and remember there were tribal spells back then, as well as changelings, you may put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token into play. And this is again, absolute all-star in the elf deck in Pauper, and I can't imagine the Pauper deck would never, play this. Like, this is a 4 of, always, you're going to see it in those decks.
It's the thing you want to have as soon as possible, turn 3 or turn 4. It's the top end of the elf deck to be able to make sure that the engine goes into overdrive. There's a couple of warriors in that deck, Nettle Sentinel being another one, which I hopefully we'll talk about later. But Lys Alana Huntmaster, also I was never ashamed to take it first pick in Lorwyn draft, which was a potent, powerful format.
Yeah.
It's just an army in a can at common. So really good.
Yeah, this allows Pauper elves to go wide in a very different way. Modern and legacy elves, they go wide, but they also go big. They also have this critical mass of lords. They can do the Craterhoof Behemoth thing. There aren't that many lords, if any, I think, in Pauper. So they really have no choice but to go wider.
Right.
And I have seen this card get out of hand. I've personally watched Kendra stream Elf Mirrors, where, Magic Online can only handle so many tokens and give you so much room, and the mirror is just obnoxious. And this card is a big part of the reason why.
Absolutely. So,
and being able to get the number of bodies on the board for cards like Timberwatch Elf, Well-Wisher is a huge deal also.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so let's move on here to number 9. This is where I want to take a little break for a while. And through number, I don't have another one until number 5.
Wow.
So you guys enjoy the next 4 choices.
Great.
Ruben, what's your number 9?
This is the Lorwyn block hour, I guess. My number 9 is a card that's very near and dear to my heart, because I've played many, many, many copies of it. Speaking of Army in a Can, I want to throw it all the way back to the GOAT, the Cloud Goat Ranger.
Nice.
Is my number 9. Cloud Goat Ranger is 3 colorless, white for a giant warrior. It's a 3/3. Originally from Lorwyn, but reprinted in the original Modern Masters. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3/1/1 white Kithkin soldier creature tokens, and has the ability tap 3 untapped Kithkin you control. Cloud Goat Ranger gets +2/+0 and gains flying until the end of the turn. Just an adorable card. I mean, the art is hilarious, as is the art for most everything in Lorwyn. I just love that setting. The Kithkin soldiers that are helping to groom the Cloud Goat and feed it and do some other chores around the house while the giant is picking his nails. But also 5 power of flying, not to mention just 6 power for 5 mana, another Army in a Can situation. This was the top end of the Kithkin deck that I had so much success with during that Lorwyn block PTQ season. Just one of my all-time favorite giant cards.
This is the kind of example that Wizards gives as a card that didn't get the respect or love or attention, really, that it deserved because it wasn't rare. They should have made it rare,
right.
But they didn't.
This is Siege Gang Commander, right? This is, almost equivalent to the rest of those big Army in a Can kind of cards, and yet it's an uncommon. It was always a first pick in both of the formats that it was in because of how potent it was. But you're right, because it wasn't a rare, it doesn't get the respect that it deserves.
Right. It didn't see like any play in Standard. There weren't people building sort of decks around it. And it was something that R&D at the time was like, we're going to be really careful to never make this type of creature, which is basically a rare uncommon. And best I can tell, all the way until Ixalan, and I'm pretty sure this was just a straight mistake, charging Monstrosaur was not supposed to be an uncommon. That is an uncommon at a stupidly high rate. A 5 mana 5/5 trample haste, like that's a rare. That's not an uncommon. But again, at least what I've heard on the inside was that it was an accidental uncommon versus Cloud Goat, which was intentional, but then also taught them a lesson of sometimes, you need to make sure uncommon's rare to get it, the prominence that it deserves. That said, Aaron, what's your number 9?
So with my number 9, I'm not going to bore you with talk of tournament pedigree.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Shots fired.
Excuse you.
Or with, sentimental, value or anything like that. My number 9 comes from a very pure, primal place. It's Enthralling Victor.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So Enthralling Victor is from Magic Origins. It is 3 colorless and a red as a creature type human warrior, 3/2, 3 power, 2 toughness. When Enthralling Victor enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature and opponent controls with power 2 or less until end of turn. You can untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. That's nice, but he fine.
You see that little character in the bottom right? Aaron actually got on a real Magic card, as it turns out. She's down there in the corner. Would you wash all the clothes on those abs? All the clothes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much. So the card is great to look at, and the flavor text really sells it. If you stare at the sun for too long, you will lose your ability to see clearly. We've all been there. We've all been in love. We've been infatuated. We know what that's like to, be so into something or someone that we just can't see anymore. And so the whole package the whole package just works. And
find somebody who looks at you like that character in the bottom right looks at Enthralling Victor, okay? That's what you do.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, the beefcake's here.
Thank you for being on brand.
You're welcome.
That's all I have to say about that.
Very nice. Let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, what you got?
We got chided a little bit in our elves episode when this wasn't in our top 10 elves, and it didn't make the list of the honorable mention. It didn't make any of our top 10s, but because it's an elf warrior, we get to talk about Glistener Elf now.
Yeah, we do.
Nice.
Glistener Elf is a 1/1 for 1 green mana. It's an elf warrior from New Phyrexia. It has an F&M promo. That's how popular it was. And of course, it has the keyword infect, which means that it deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and players in the form of poison counters. This is the 1-mana 1/1 infect card that Infect needed to become competitive. It is the staple piece of the Infect deck. Making giant growth effects playable in Modern and Legacy, which I always love. Card's just spectacular.
Yeah, very rarely ever stays a 1/1. You need to kill it. Like most 1/1s, you usually think you've got a turn, maybe even 2 turns. No, this card gets out of hand fast, and there are so many ways to protect it with things like there's Apostle's Blessing. You know, you have Groundswells, you have Vines of Vastwood. I mean, it's just you have to deal with it. And I've lost several games where I've underestimated it, and I've paid dearly. Did you mute yourself?
Yes. So I got to go to Pro to Amsterdam and stuff, where new Phyrexia wasn't on the horizon yet, but Infect was a known thing at that time. And I remember people, pros that I was talking to at the time saying, well, they're not going to make a 1-mana, 1/1 Infect. That'd be ridiculous. Like, why would they do something like that? And yet,
right. And then they did.
And that was awesome.
And then Tom Ross won every tournament he ever entered.
That guy has closed like almost 1/4, just under a quarter of every top 8 he's made. Like 24% he's won. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Guy's a master. Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is a card that has some sentimental value for me. A couple of months ago, I was chosen to perform on to be a part of the Ravnica Allegiance pre-release. And I played a deck that was very far outside of my comfort zone. And, I sometimes get a little criticism for being kind of predictable. I like what I like. I like my graveyard decks. I like my dead things. And I don't really stray from that too often. But I took a really, really big risk for the pre-release, and it paid off in spades. My game against Shivam was so much fun. I was able to do broken things with a combination of really, really fair cards. And one of the cards that helped make that happen is my number 8, which is Hero of Precinct 1. Nice. So Hero of Precinct 1 is from Ravnica Allegiance. It's 1 and a white, a creature type human warrior, a 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. If you are playing in any sort of Ravnica expansion, whether it be sealed or standard, you are probably going to be surrounded by multicolored cards. And if you're able to slam this on turn 2 and protect it, you can really just run away with the game. It can create an engine if you're running any sort of stack outlets, like Priest of the Forgotten Gods, or if you're running Flameblade Artist, you can feed the tokens that you make to that. You have sacrifice fodder for some of the Orzhov kill spells that require you to sacrifice something. This is just a card that most people would not attribute to me, but that I actually had a lot of fun playing. It was a huge risk because my deck revolved around this card, and when I got it on the board, the games just went so different. And people tagged me when they went to their pre-releases and they had this card, they were like, I'm playing the Aaron deck. And so it was really great to be associated with something a little different than what I normally do. And I really like this card.
It's a little shocking how this card isn't seeing as much play as I was kind of expecting it to.
Yeah.
I mean, it sees play.
There's some play.
There's like a mid-range Esper deck that uses it. The deck building requirements for it are a little bit steep, but yeah, there is still time, and it's a demonstrably good card and very powerful.
Yeah, getting free things is all just for playing Magic essentially is great.
It's like little Lissalana Huntmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Just for doing stuff. You're getting stuff just for doing stuff, and I'll take that. Hero Precinct 1, also a card that is guildless, is not attached to any one guild, which is interesting. There's precincts and whatnot, and those things were defined in the D&D book. Is that right, Ruben? Yeah.
So the story book and the story guideline and the D&D book also added on to this, but essentially there are different districts.
Like 7 or something, I think 7 or 8.
Well,
there was a white too. It was White of Precinct 6.
Yeah, White of Precinct 6. So there are districts, which are sort of like the boroughs in the New York City of Ravnica, and the different districts are like Brooklyn or the Bronx or Manhattan. The 10th district is like Manhattan, and that has 6 precincts. And the Hero of Precinct 1, which is where all the guild halls, most of the guild halls are located, is a reference to that.
Neat. Well, that's really cool. But as a card like that I've built around, and I've built decks with it and stuff, like I put Judith and whatnot in the Marauder decks and stuff. It's really fun when it gets going.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, super cool card. That said, again, I don't have a number 8 or a number 9 or a number 7 or a number 6. So we're on number 7. It's fine. Whatever. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is man, I love this card so much. And y'all hate it so much, and it's amazing. And I almost got a pie bet out of it, except for I got by P. Sully and Efro during the Dominaria set review, and then Jaya happened. But had G not been earlier in the alphabet than J, we could have had a successful pie in the face in Evan Irwin based on the card Goblin Chainwhirler.
Mm-hmm.
So Goblin Chainwhirler is a red Goblin Warrior creature. It's a 3/3 with first strike from Dominaria. When Goblin Chainwhirler enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. The trick is, once you get moving, don't stop. Chainwhirler is a menace to society. It is a problem to the point where there was ban discussion.
Oh my God, that was so
won
silly.
the Pro Tour, which was kind of weird, but you know, it happened. It's the card that kept Llanowar Elves from competitive Magic for like 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Which is a heck of a feat to do. You know, a card with 25 years and multiple Pro Tour wins in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It has been for a long time the centerpiece of the mono red deck wins strategy in Standard. These days it's more closer to a lava spike deck than it is a traditional burn deck, and so they're beginning to cut those.
Right, and run like 1 or 2 of type things.
Yeah, they run a couple because they want to have more lava spikes and skewer the critics and things like that. And then when you have these big clunky 3/3s that waste time on your turn, that they don't like those as much. But it won a Pro Tour. It is an extremely potent card. It is the earliest of the line of the Dominaria 3-pip creatures to win Pro Tours, of which we've had back to back with Benelish here, Benelish Captain and Tempest Djinn after Goblin Chainwhirler. But Chainwhirler, man, that's a hell of a card.
This paired really well with Soulscar Mage, so if you happen to be playing something that was bigger than the 1 damage it could deal, you would still be able to leave a -1/-1 counter. It was particularly relevant for Hazaret in the red or the red-black mirrors because she's indestructible, and -1/-1 is a really great way to deal with indestructible things. Was a huge part of the mirror. You know, everybody's kind of got their own little 1/1s that they're running, and so being able to sweep each other's who can slam it first. I never dreamed that the card would create the discussions that it did, and I thought it was great.
First of all, I got to give it up to Wizards. The fact that literally 4 of the 5 triple color cards have seen top tier play. Yeah. Only the black one, which was honestly an incredibly pushed shade, has still not seen play yet. Maybe it will. We'll see. Still could. But I also love, I'm honestly in awe at times at how good play design is to recognize, put this card as the best card in the format. And then the next set comes out, and it's not the best card in the format anymore. That's genius. The fact that we have status and statue with this Super Mondo combo thing you can do to wipe out your opponent's board, it's just kind of a cool thing that's happening in the metagame. That's fantastic. Like, we're living in some seriously awesome Standard times right now when stuff like this happens, and I love it. And this card, was obviously amazing, bonkers, and I'm just like, oh, I think it's so good. And then, here comes Efro and Beasol, like, this is the best card in the set, and it's not close, and everyone's going to play around this thing forever, and okay. I'm like, all right. Yep. There won't land anywhere else. That's fine. But that was also my number 9. Okay. So we were definitely on the
right there.
Yeah, we were on the same wavelength for that one. Aaron, what's number 7?
My number 7 is a card that means so much to me. I kind of knew something like this was coming down the pipe, but I didn't exactly know what form it was going to take. This was a card that was introduced during the storyline of Fate Reforged. We talk a lot about how representation matters, and we had Ashiok, who famously was a they, or somebody who didn't really conform to a gender, so they were always just referred to by their name of Ashiok. And then in Fate Reforged, we were given our first canon trans character, and this was a huge boon. So many people, it struck a chord with so many people and really paved the way for, other forms of representation that we now have, such as Autumn Burchett winning a Pro Tour. But this is really where I think it got started. And my number 7 is Alesha, Who Smiles at Death. So Alesha is from Fate Reforged. She is 2 and a red, legendary creature, human warrior with first strike. Whenever Alesha attacks, you can pay a hybrid white or black combination of the two. If you do return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking, she has 3 power and 2 toughness. Before Alesha and even after, representation isn't great. We usually get resigned to being like serial killers or sex workers or things like that. And so here was a warrior, a leader, a young leader of her tribe who got it the way that it should have been. She killed things and she proved her worth. And so it was just a really great origin story. It was a really neat take on how trans people come up with their names. This is a name that was given to her based on her prowess. And so really great origin story. Wizards took a lot of steps to make this story accurate and, relatable to our experiences. They did their homework, and the card didn't see any real standard play. It was a big hit in Commander, but it meant a lot to a lot of people, which was nice.
Well, look, Terramander says trans rights. Right. So you're aware.
Cons Mafia.
Pretty much.
Very nice.
Yeah,
So
it's also one of the 2 or 3 most popular commanders that is a warrior as well. I think that the top of the list is like Risk the Redeemed, Alesha, and the green-blue Izuri.
Well, it's so customizable. It's kind of like She-Ra in a sense that when you have such a broad category of power 2 or less, you can really put whatever you want in there. And so there's a reason why it attracts people, not just necessarily her origins, but you can really build it and season it to taste.
Absolutely. Goes really well with things like Hiki Jiki, Siege Gang Commander, other high-cost, low-power kind of creatures. For sure.
Oh, my gosh. And of course, Scryfall, being the best search engine for Magic ever, not close, now has a related searches where they can show you a way to search for all the creatures that can be returned by Alesha.
Oh, wow.
Right there on the right-hand side of the card on the
That's
page.
Cool. I should check out their site sometime.
For real? Okay. And Alesha, it's the second time we've actually had her on, or had them on a top 10 list. This would be for the top 10 wedge cards. So that was really cool too. All right, so again, we're moving on here to number 6. I'm almost done. I almost got entries, I promise. Yay. But not for this one. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is another card that I love and is a red card. Apologies to Erin Campbell, mistress of the not having a mountain hanging on the wall, but another Pro Tour winner, another card that is in the Vintage Cube. Another card that has been attacking for the win, was one of the resurgence of red decks winning Pro Tours in the hands of Scandinavians, when Martin Dang used to play a lot of turn 1 Zergo Bellstrikers. And some turn 2, but I like me a turn 1 Zergo Bellstriker. Zergo Bellstriker is a 1 red mana 2/2 legendary creature orc warrior with dash of a colorless and a red. You can cast the spell for its dash cost. If you do, it gains haste and it's returned from the battlefield to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Zergo Bellstriker can't block creatures with power 2 or greater. Is that a line of text I care about? Am I supposed to care about that line of text?
No one cares. Who's blocking? Who's blocking?
Blocking's for closers.
That's blocking's for people who aren't attacking. That's not what I want to be doing with an orc warrior that has dash. Get out of here with that. This card was extremely potent and powerful. Dash is a great mechanic to avoid sorcery speed removal and wraths. Meanwhile, you could also play one of them on turn 1, and then once it died, then you could start dashing through the snow with your next ones.
Nice.
Just a really powerful, efficient way of dealing extra damage, and just a great 1-drop.
I mean, Wizards has issues making 1 mana 2/2s in red. They don't necessarily want to, but they do because it's exciting, but you don't because it's scary, and it's often going to be too good and too much pressure for the format for just basically there to be a mono red deck that's going to be the best thing. And Wizards kind of sort of, gotten close and backed away and gotten close and backed away in terms of what they're comfortable with. Basically, it almost always has to have 1 toughness if it's going to have 2 power for 1 mana. Whether it's Savannah Lines all the way back. But Zergo Bellstriker was one of those, it's like, is it going to see play? It's legendary, and red players are like, whatever, dude, take 2. Shut up.
Red players don't even know what legendary means, let's be honest.
Legend, whatever, man. I just turn them sideways. That's what we're here to do.
It had 2 drawbacks, and neither drawback was really a drawback. The fact that it was legendary was like medium. Every once in a while, you get Zergo flooded, but who cares? I mean, you just throw them into the fire anyway.
Right.
And then the other drawback had to do with something called blocking, which I don't know what that is. So.
Is that a thing? I don't even know that was a thing.
Always be attacking.
Always be BC attacking. I'm sorry, Aaron, what's your number 6?
So it's no secret, I love Commander, but I also like affordable Commander. You know, I try not to spend a lot of money on decks if I can possibly help it. And my number 6 is a Commander staple that I have jammed into several of my Commander decks. It's affordable. I think it costs less than $1. And it has an effect that is very expensive by itself. But for whatever reason,
hunting wabbits, yes.
For whatever reason, when you put it on an expensive creature, the value of the card goes down, but it still has a place in my heart. My number 6 is Butcher of Malachor. So Butcher of Malachor is originally from World Wake. It's 5 colorless and 2 black. It's a creature type vampire warrior, 5/4, with flying. Whenever Butcher or another creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this is a Grave Pact type effect, a Dictate of Erebos type effect on a stick. These are always welcome in black, where we are usually happy to sacrifice our own things. It also provides a form of insurance, where even if we're not doing ridiculous sack things, it still gives us a way to, if you want to kill our things, that's fine. You all have to do that too. It changes the balance of power for the whole table, because if one person kills my things, everybody's paying for it. So you have to kind of keep those scales balanced. On top of that, it's a 5/4 with evasion, which is very relevant. And so this is a card that if I'm playing black, I'm usually finding room for this card. And even when you're not trying to break it, you still just do fun things.
His verdict is always guilty. His sentence is always death.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. And it's a good thing, because they've reprinted it like 37 times.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, it's in everything.
Good.
Commanders 2011, 14, 15, 17, in the anthology and the second anthology, two
and
different
that's good,
tool
because
decks.
the Grave Pact and Dictate by themselves are like $5 to $10 cards. So like, save yourself some money, pay $1 and get this thing.
Absolutely. And that's one of those, it's also one of those cards, or at least those effects, that are crazy cheap when they're in standard. I remember Dictate of Erebos was like $1 rare. It was a crap rare, in fact, that no one cared about. You can get as many as you want for $1. And then all of a sudden, doop, 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 here we are. But Butcher Malachor is sweet, and has Jason Chan art, same guy who did Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is really awesome. But that said, that means we get to move on to our top 5, and I got one. Oh boy.
Wow.
You know, we've talked a lot about the Lorwyn block, the Lorwyn and the Shadowmoor sort of combined together. We spoke a little bit about really popular commanders and the commander colors and the commander creatures they use and the warriors involved. And seriously, this card is $31? God almighty, Wizards, would you just reprint Risk the Redeemed already? Are you serious?
Is it seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh my God, guys, for real. Now, Risk the Redeemed is an amazing commander because it's only 1 mana. It's a green or a white hybrid for a 1/1 rare legendary elf warrior. For a white or green hybrid and 2 generic mana, tap, put a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token into play. Remember, I was talking about warriors that make more warriors. And 2 Celestia mana, 4 generic mana, tap, for each creature token you control, put a token into play that's a copy of that creature. So it does a whole bunch just for 1 mana. And if they kill it, it only takes 3 mana to play it again, and so on and so forth. But the idea that you have really awesome commanders that are cheap is nice, but my God, you got to reprint them. You got to reprint them. That's
wild. I had no idea it was that expensive. Yeah, this is another card. I learned this lesson when I played Hapatra, is that having a commander that is so cheap really just changes the way that the game is played, because these are commanders that you do need to kind of kill on sight or they will run away with the game. But when they are so cheap, it takes so little effort to bring them back. And so other players have to ask themselves, okay, how much of my resources am I willing to commit to just constantly killing this thing that they're just going to bring back in no time? And this is definitely one of those cards. Green-white is known for bolstering their ranks. These 1/1s aren't going to stay 1/1s for long. And so if you leave it alone, you have Elvis. There's so many lords that can come into play. You don't have to worry about having the right kind of mana. It can be green or white. This is a card you have to deal with.
You can get damaged copies for $20. That's about as good as you got. Hope it didn't too much water damage or a tear on it.
Most recently had a spectacular appearance on game nights with some of our favorites over there, Josh and Jimmy. Really just a commander all-star, super popular, and it will continue to be until it'll continue to be this expensive until it's reprinted, because it is a unique card, being a 1-drop commander that can take advantage of the token strategies.
Another one of those
you want to
cards.
make sure that $20 Reese though is not Reese's Pieces. Just see it.
Wow.
Give me a B.
Right.
Give me a B.
Mm.
Fine.
C+. All right, here we go.
Aristha D.
Wow, that was awful. Okay,
I'll take it. I will take that.
Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is a play on the Eternal Witness kind of card. A card that had a ton of play in Standard.
Would you call her a maternal witness?
I would, sure. I'll call it a maternal witness, considering the fact that there's like a little baby in a little thingy.
There's a little baby.
Little baby in the backpack, in the side satchel. My number 5 is Den Protector.
Yes.
Den Protector is a colorless and a green for a human warrior. It's a 2/1 with Megamorph of a colorless and a green. You may cast this card face down as a 2/2 for 3, and you can turn it face up for its Megamorph cost and put a +1/+1 counter on it. Creatures with power less than Den Protector's power can't block it. And when Den Protector is turned face up, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
Oh, no. Target card.
Sorry, target card, not creature card.
Anything?
Target card, Eternal Witness style, anything from the graveyard. So you could cycle Den Protectors, which I did a lot, but also could just return Dromoka's command or literally anything.
Paired very well with Deathness Raptor, but just the card itself, this is something that we have seen, when you really look at art, going back to kind of representation matters, to see a woman, a mom, or who appears to be a mother in a battle hardened role. She's not staying in a cave protecting the family. She's fighting. She's got the baby strapped to her hip, Gretchen Wilson style. Okay. And then she's got the big axe. She's charging in at you. We don't see this very often. Evan, you know who that is. Don't lie. And so
I had to Google it.
But it was just a trope that we don't often see, powerful women swinging in and also being moms and bringing that baby with you. And so, this was definitely a shout out to the teamer. This deck was a pillar of Standard when it was legal. It did awesome things and was just a win on several fronts.
I mean, if you're going to get near Eternal Witness, you've almost guaranteed a hit at this point.
Yeah.
Megamorph was one of the stupidest, worst mechanics I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, it was shockingly bad. And I mean, I don't know, even from the name to just like, I don't know, the gameplay was kind of silly, but it was fine. But the card was great. The card was amazing. And even that creatures with power less than it can't block it actually came into play.
Very relevant.
Particularly in a field full of Morph, and she turns into a 3-power creature.
Even the Dromoka's commands, just putting a counter on it.
Was important. Absolutely.
Can't be blocked by other Den Protectors. Yeah.
Right. And my favorite is the yelling giant axe jumping through the air. Baby 100% asleep. Napping baby. That baby got no problems. We're just chilling. It's amazing. Oh my gosh. And this was my number 8. So I got lots of love for Den Protector. That said, Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is another commander card. Also saw Standard play recently in the Rally the Ancestors decks. This is a card I talked a little bit about Butcher Malachor and how sometimes you're trying to sacrifice things. And effects like this, Edict effects, are always popular when you're dealing with hexproof creatures that you can't normally kill with conventional kill spells, or if you're playing big dragons. The creatures like Ojutai and Silumgar were very difficult to deal with out of the Esper Dragons decks back in the day. And so my number 5 was a really clean, efficient answer to those types of cards. My number 5 is Fleshbag Marauder. So Fleshbag Marauder originally started off in Shards of Alara. It was a creature type zombie warrior, 3/1. When Fleshbag Marauder comes into play, each player sacrifices a creature, 3 power, 1 toughness. If you have no other creatures, you can actually sacrifice it. It's fine. But when you're playing something like Rally with ETB triggers, you can sacrifice it and just get that back anyways. And that's good, clean living. Or if you have anything that has a death trigger, you can feed it to the Marauder. In Commander, everybody has to sacrifice a creature. And so this is something that, everybody has to worry about, everybody has to deal with, and it's just a really neat answer to certain problematic cards.
Well, we finally have this in Pauper. 1 more mana, gets you a 4/2 instead of a 3/1, but you have Slum Reaper now, thanks to Ultimate Masters downgrading that for you, which was nice, because Fleshbag Marauder has been reprinted a million times. There's multiple versions of this type of effect, for example. I think Merciless Executioner was the other one.
And is also a warrior.
Either or could have worked just fine.
It's whatever you're into.
But this is the OG. This is the OG.
Yeah. This is the OG, and the one that also saw that competitive play in those Rally decks.
I think, Aaron, you're trying to say that some people are into fleshbags, and some people are just into no mercy.
I'm not going to entertain that.
Woo, that got weird. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, the slow shaking of Ruben's head. Wonderful. I want to talk about one of my favorite warriors, like the one that basically popped into my head. It didn't make it at the top of my list for a variety of reasons, but that definitely wanted to be in my top 5. This is one of the cards that was printed recently and also just became a monster hit, and is also one of those nice examples of, card costs X, foil costs 20 times X, because, oh my god, this card is amazing. But I love it. It showed up in Battle Bond, and it took a minute. But then all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, this card is amazing. And before you know it, I'm borrowing Ruben's deck that is, well, he borrowed from somebody else that was amazing. And it was featuring Najeela, the Blade Blossom, who I just love. This deck was so much fun to play. It's a red and 2 generic mana. It was a mythic legendary human warrior in Battle Bond. So 3 mana for a 3/2. Whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking, and that of course includes herself. For Wooburg, all 5 different types of mana, untap all attacking creatures. They gain trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Activate this ability only during combat. So if you have 10 mana, obviously you could run this back twice. You get multiple attacks. Every attack is making more tokens and creatures, and it's it's absolute madness. I love Najeela, and the card is like $5 or $6, and the foil is like 80, because that's just how that works out.
This seems to be a running trend with the Battle Bond commanders, is their ability to just get out of control. You have the coin flipping duo, where if you pair that with Quark's Thumb and things like that, you're in for a really bad time. I remember getting killed with a 96/96 thanks to that card and some evasion, and I was like, why? You have the pet and the boy that can get out of control. Amazing. Somebody played that in Vintage the other day and played that to hilarious effect in one of the leagues. And these commanders in general are just not meant to stay fair. They get out of control very quickly, and Najeela is a shining example of that. And one thing I also see with 5-color commanders is that you don't even necessarily have to lean into the 5-color part, where you can choose to play her as just a Mardu or as an Izzet or whatever you want. If you want to do 5, that's fine, but a lot of times people just want an excuse to play 5 colors, and if she happens to do something, that's fine too.
Warriors that make warriors they're the greatest warriors of all. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. This was my only hire. This was my number 10.
Nice.
Najeela the Blade Blossom, when I played that deck, I felt so powerful. I felt so in control of everything.
It was ridiculous.
It was absurd. Yeah, this card is spectacular. And again, a warrior that makes warriors in the warrior list. It's got to be there.
Very, very nice.
Hashtag Ruben Blossoms there.
That's right.
All right. Ruben, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is a card that has seen a lot of competitive success over the years across a number of decks. It is, of course, in the Pro Tour cube. It is in the Vintage cube. It is in the Legacy cube. Lots of successful tournaments. It was in a Pro Tour winning deck in the hands of Tom Martell when he won with the Aristocrats. It's been popular in Birthing Pod. It's been popular in Kiki Cord. It's been popular in Human Reanimator. It's been popular in the Snow Red decks. And it is popular particularly in the Loading Ready run Hats Tribal.
Oh boy.
My number 4 is Zealous Conscripts.
Nice.
Zealous Conscripts, originally from the Avacyn Restored expansion, but we won't hold it against her. 4 colorless and a red for a human warrior. It's a 3/3 with haste, but we aren't playing it for that. We're playing it for when Zealous Conscripts enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Untap that permanent. It gains haste until end of turn. You haven't lived until you've stolen an opponent's planeswalker that's ready to ultimate. Taking that ultimate from right under their nose. Boy, that feels bad when it happens to you and good when you do it.
Feels great.
Shout out to Steve Prescott, who has a lot of appearances on this list, particularly because we're talking about Lorwyn and Shadowmoor so much. And Steve Prescott's style and sort of bubbly kind of art really lended itself well to that environment, but also did Zealous Conscript.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a great way. Like you said, you can take anything you want. I prefer to take things and then sacrifice them to things like Falcon Wrath Aristocrats. Another thing that you can kind of manipulate with ETB triggers, where if you're fine doing it just once, but why not cast on Burial Rites and do it again? Like, that's just what I'm into.
Right.
Zealous Conscripts is one of those cards that they haven't really made many more of them. As I recall, there's not a lot of stealing permanents going on anyway. It did create an amazing moment where honestly, there was this weird part of the metagame in Standard at one point where it was like you shouldn't get your planeswalkers to ultimate status.
Correct.
You get them close, and then you get them down, then get them
That
close.
used to happen to Silumgar too back in Battle for Zendikar Standard. The thing was to use Silumgar to steal the Gideon, and then you ult Gideon and kill it. So that was another time when that mattered.
And that to me is super fun. That's sort of those level, the metagame on top of the metagame type stuff. Because
there were I remember having planeswalkers that were at like 7 loyalty. I could tick them up to 8. And then instead of minusing, I just chose not to use the planeswalker for the turn.
That happens.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that whether they had it or not, like that influences the way that you use planeswalkers in Standard. And that's really, really cool. I would not hate to see Zealous Conscripts either come back or something similar to it would be really interesting. Or maybe a permanent with converted mana cost X or less or whatever type thing could be really interesting for something that costs cheaper.
Well, we've seen
And
things like
enthralling
Captivating
Victor
Crew.
for sorry.
Yeah, we've seen things like, enthralling Victor, Captivating Crew that deals with just creatures, but this is anything. It can be a problematic land, it can be, a planeswalker, an artifact. I mean, this is a nice way for Red to deal with things.
Yeah.
All right, what is your number 4, Aaron?
My number 4 is one of my 2 hires on this list.
Ooh, okay. Well, we're going to run into another one soon enough, I guess. Let's move on here to number 3. And my number 3 is a long-beloved favorite, is a card that they've printed a whole bunch of times and yet is still worth dollars and probably always will be. A card they most recently printed in Commander Anthology. It is a warrior that makes other warriors, which is also appreciated. It is a card that I think Ruben would approve of, as I'm pretty sure this was in the Pro Tour winning deck from Pro Tour Hollywood. Yeah, back in 2011.
Wow.
Probably was.
If it's what I think it is.
Absolutely. It's also one of the most gorgeous cards I've ever seen. It's beautiful, and some people would even call it perfect. The Imperius Perfect, originally from Lore 1, is an uncommon green and 2 generic mana for a 2/2 elf warrior that other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. Green, tap : create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So this was in Charles Gindy's winning first place deck, as I recall.
That's correct.
And this card it used to be very expensive until they finally reprinted it again around 2014. And then they reprinted since then a few times, which is great, and put it back in Eternal Masters and yada yada. But, they put it in Eternal Masters as rare. So there's a reason for that, because first of all, limited, this card can just run away.
It goes out of control very quickly in limited. I mean, elves that make other elves in a format where creature types matter, that's pretty bananas. So
yeah. So this card in and of itself, I love it. I think the art's amazing. I think it really helped Lorwyn to have that sort of almost magical storybook, like everything here is a little bit different. It isn't sort of you're like, brimstone and fire and everything's death and destruction. It's like, no, we are beautiful and blah, blah, blah. Even though it was kind of weird for Lorwyn because they basically were like xenophobic, essentially.
Yeah, the elves of Lorwyn were very pro keeping outsiders out of the forest.
I think there were also, if I remember correctly, there was also sort of the eye blight schism where if you were too pretty, there were like the pretty elves, and then there were the ones that had little quirks about them. And if you were too pretty, they would, if I believe correctly, they would like deface you or like scar you. So that
it was if you committed a crime, the worst thing that could be done to you was not to kill you, was not to ostracize you, but was to symmetrize your face.
Okay.
I think it's just called mess up your face. They messed up your face.
Right. With a scimitar, they would make it not symmetrical anymore.
Sure.
What's wrong with your face?
Yeah.
Yep. Ruben, what's number 3?
My number 3 is another card that has a ton of competitive pedigree, mostly in Modern, honestly. It's been a really popular piece of the Jund and Abzan Modern decks, but it did win a Pro Tour in Standard in the hands of Lucas Blohan and his Orzhov control deck, which was one of my favorite Pro Tour top 8s to watch. That was the one where Owen had the Teamer Emerge deck. Yeah. LSV was playing the Collected Company Bant deck. There were a ton of Delirium Ramp kind of strategies of various types. Reed was in that top 8. And that was just a fun top 8 for me to watch. But it was taken down by Lucas Blohan, and in no small part because of 3 copies of Kalidas, Traitor of Get.
Nice.
That he had in his deck. Kalidas is a returning character, the original one being a 7-drop that saw no play. But Kalidas Trader of Get is 2 colorless black for a vampire warrior, a 3/4 with lifelink that has, if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile that card and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and also has pay 2 colorless and a black mana and sacrifice another vampire or zombie, put 2+1/+1 counters on Kalidas Trader of Get.
Yeah, this is my number 4.
Nice.
This card is an engine by itself. You know, this is sort of, and you're not even really trying. You know, you don't have to really do anything to build around it. If you're playing black, you're probably already just killing things as being par for the course. And then you can, you make a zombie from the thing you killed, and then you can feed those zombies to Kalidas. And so this card can easily run away with the game. It's still about a $10 card right now. It sees play, you know, in older formats where decks like Dredge and Hollow One are running around. This is not easy to kill. You can't bolt it. It's a 3/4. Oh, and it has lifelink too, which is surprisingly relevant. The art is incredibly creepy. Todd Lockwood, which really emphasizes the vampires that are working in league with the Eldrazi. You know, they sort of worship them, and you see the sort of parasitic crab on Kalidas. You see the blood running down, implying that these, you know, the shoulder bones jutting out of him that are very Eldrazi. Just terrifying art. I have the Planeswalker, and just a very, very powerful card that you just have to deal with.
Yeah, the original Blood Chief of Get that showed up in Zendikar, I'll never forget, because it was literally the first pick of any draft pack from Zendikar I ever opened. And it's hilarious because it is literally the worst card in that format.
Even Commander players don't want it. Like, it was,
you know, I was like, it's a rare. I don't know the format. It seems really awesome. It's a 7-mana 5/5. I guess we'll get there, and it's the fastest draft format on the face of the planet.
Right.
But Kalidas Trader of Get, really interesting if you actually compare the artwork, whereas the original Blood Chief of Get had this sort of spiky armor, but now it's like out of his body. It's like crawling out of his body. It was really cool.
One with the armor, yeah.
Absolutely. So this card was a monster in Standard for as an Oath of the Gatewatch Mythic Rare, and obviously see some play in Modern as well, which is exciting. That said, Aaron, what's number 3?
My number 3 is a Standard All-Star, and I don't play a lot of Standard nowadays. It takes a lot for me to play Standard, but if I see anything that even closely resembles a graveyard-based strategy, I will get out of bed for that. I will subscribe to your newsletter. And so when KYT previewed this card, I believe it was either Mana Deprived or the First Strike podcast, but they had previewed this card, and it was everything I wanted to be doing in life. And I was like, I'm interested. And so I started playing Black-Green Delirium. And then this card ended up carrying over to Modern. This was also a card that the Black-Green decks wanted as a way to fuel their Tarmogoyfs, as a way to put their Lingering Souls into the graveyard. And this card has just brought me a lot of happy memories, and still goes for about $7 a pop right now. And number 3 is Grim Flayer. So Grim Flayer is from Eldritch Moon. It's a black and a green. It's a 2/2 human warrior with trample. Whenever Grim Flayer deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest on top of your library in any order. And has Delirium, which means as long as you have 3 or 4 or more card types in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2. So very easily turns into a 4/4 with trample for 2. It's great in the early game. If you can slam it on turn 2, it's fine. If you do get it in the mid to late game, congrats, you have a 4/4 with trample for 2. The ability to filter your draws is very, very powerful. The ability to feed your graveyard, to put specific things in there to tailor your delirium, to make sure that you have you're hitting all of your creature types, or if you just want to put things in there that you plan on getting back at some point. This card really, really does it all. It is mythic for very good reason, and it's just so good, so good.
This was my number 6, and I'll be honest, while I enjoy the card in terms of like it's powerful and I'm a spike and I like really powerful stuff or whatever, it feels a little heavy-handed. You know what I mean? It feels like, like R&D was like, okay, here's your Delirium card. This is the one you want. This is the one in the new expansion set that you're going to need to buy the packs for and buy the singles from. And this is what you've been waiting for. It does exactly what you need it to do to make the Delirium deck work the way you want it to work. And in some ways that's fine. In other ways, it just kind of hurts to be so obvious. You know what I mean? It's so on the nose of like, we made this card amazing and it's mythic because it's amazing and it's exactly what you want. That's why it's mythic. So go buy the packs. It's a little too shameless, I guess is a word.
Another of the amazing black-green cards. This one particularly good in the Abzan strategies because of the card Lingering Souls that you want to be putting into your graveyard, not only to grow your Delirium, but also to be able to get the back half of the Lingering Souls and be able to filter that draw out as well.
Yeah, this was my number 6, and I love me a Grim Flayer. I do think it's great, but I'm always a little bothered by I'm just going like, did you really? Like, come on. The 2-mana creature? Like, okay, fine. Fine. All right, number 2. Let's move on here to number 2. Ruben, what's your number 2?
If you had told me that we were going to make a list that had only warriors on it, and that Goblin Chainwhirler would not be the highest rated warrior that costs 3 mana and would go in mono red decks, I would have said, that's probably accurate because I think Goblin Rabble Master is a better card.
Yeah, that card's ridiculous.
Yeah, Goblin Rabble Master is 2 colorless and a red for a Goblin Warrior, originally from M15. Core set love, everybody. Yeah. And the promo art is my favorite. If you ever go and take a look at the
promo's pretty dope.
The side-eye goblin giving you the stink eye. It has a whole myriad of abilities, so many abilities, in fact, that it doesn't have flavor text. Other goblin creatures you control each turn if able. Other goblin creatures you control attack each turn if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield. And whenever Goblin Rabble Master attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. So, let's do some math. Hashtag Rabble Math. The first turn you play this, you attack for 1. The next turn, you can attack for 6 if you really want to.
Woof.
Yeah. So this thing hits hard and it hits quick. It's the best 3-drop to play after a Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
Legion Loyalist was trying its best to be Goblin Rabble Master and is fine, but didn't live up to the hype that Rabble Master did.
No.
This card, again, another piece of the Pro Tour winning mono red decks that Sweden began winning and then never stopped winning after it began. And it's just a really excellent card.
This is a turn 4 if unchecked win condition. As in, a 4-turn win condition. Play it. Yeah. 4 turns later, you win the game if they didn't do anything about it.
This is a staple in the mono red prison decks across modern, legacy, and vintage. This is a card that you can cheat in with your Chrome Moxes or your Simian Spirit Guides, and sometimes slamming a Goblin Rabble Master on turn 1 can very quickly close out the game in formats that just aren't used to packing a lot of removal. It is very much a thing. Or you ramp out a turn 1 Blood Moon, and then while your opponent is screwed and has no mana, you put out something like this and just close out the game. Who would have thought that this card would see play across 4 different formats? Like, it's pretty impressive.
And it's nice to be able to look at it in hindsight, of course, and be able to like, this card's obviously amazing. It's a multi-format all-star. Back in the day, they were like, I don't know, it seems okay,
Even
whatever.
Jund, there have been times where modern Jund has even run with it because, Jund is all about, kind of 1-for-1ing you and then slamming these haymakers like Kalidas, Olivia, and sometimes even this. And what a world.
Oftentimes, at least, in terms of the trends of the early M10 to M19 or whatever sets these days, of the best thing was always the most expensive thing. It was the Titans or whatever. It was clearly a giant monster that you're going to take over the game with. Rabble Master is a little more subtle in that regard, but no less hard hitting. Like, this thing takes over games by itself. This was my number 7. So clearly lots of love for Rabble Master.
Big packs a punch, that's for sure. And quick shout out here at this point to the other warrior, the other Goblin Warrior that was in the Gruul deck wins that Martin Dang won the Pro Tour with, Foundry Street Denizen, because I don't think it's going to be y'all's 1 or 2. So
yeah, got to miss that one, fortunately. Yeah. Now, if I am doing this correctly and paying attention to Aaron, if you had 2 hires, that means your number 2 is also a hire.
Yep, my last hire.
Because you can't have a number 1 hire. That don't make no sense. But I also have a Goblin in my number 2 slot. That, I'll be honest, I am shocked that Ruben does not have this on his list. If I recall correctly, and I may not be, but I'm pretty sure this won a Pro Tour. I'm very confident it top 8'd a Pro Tour in some fashion or other. This card ran a bunch of a tournament scene, essentially. This card was a card that at the time had a weird line of text on it because it was trying to fight an enemy that came up earlier. I'm trying to give as much. I like to see Ruben try to figure out where I'm at, because you know, it's a goblin. I've told you it's a goblin, right? And when I think of goblins and powerful goblins, and I think of goblins that are just like trying to tear somebody's helmet off. You remember those goblins that have protection from blue? Because Goblin Piledriver is a goblin warrior. It's a red and a generic mana for a 1/2 protection from blue, which, if you don't know because they don't have it anymore, means it can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, or enchanted by anything blue. Whenever Goblin Piledriver attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. This thing, during Onslaught block, during that time period, it was both in standard and I'm positive in block. This card was an absolute monster, and it would run away with games, and it saw play all the way back to Legacy Goblins, because this is how you kind of exploded, out of the gate, by giving it haste with your other goblins and whatnot, and pumping it, of course, because you have so many goblins that are being turned sideways. So Goblin Piledriver was a card that was brought into Modern as a result of being printed in Magic Origins, and basically landed with a thud. Nothing really happened. Everyone got excited, but nothing actually got there. But these days, they're saying Goblin Ringleader, if it's in Modern Horizons, is going to be the card that breaks open Modern Goblins, and I think Goblin Piledriver will be right there.
Yeah. Did not win the Pro Tour. Got second place to Osip Lebedovich's Astral Slide deck in the finals. That's Tommy Wallamies.
Gotcha.
The pride of Finland, who's now a stand-up comedian. And so good on him for that. Yeah, Piledriver is a heck of a card. One of the most iconic original artwork with that goblin trying to tear the helmet off of the
It's so cool.
the dude in the
It
foreground.
is so cool.
Yeah, and just art that you've never seen even anything close to that style before. Fabulous card. Obviously, the Goblins deck was a powerhouse in Legacy for a long time. I would love to see Goblins become a thing in Modern.
Even Standard, we're so close. We're so close.
We are. I mean, but these are the types of cards that when this showed up, I mean, like, just the floodgates broke up. And obviously, it was Onslaught, it's a tribal block, and that's what they wanted it to be. But these are the types of effects that get you there, which is terrific. Let's move on here to number 1. Aaron, what is your number 1?
My number 1 gets no respect. In fact, I was at regionals yesterday, and there was a young man who took a look at the card. And he goes, "Oh, this card does nothing," and just dismissively puts it back where he found it. And I take offense to that, because this card does things, okay? And you will not be talking about my baby this way.
Oh my gosh.
My number 1 is Golgari Thug.
Of course it is. It had to be. It had to be.
So Golgari Thug is originally from Ravnica, City of Guilds. It's a creature type human warrior, which always shocked me, because if you look at the art, it looks very much like a zombie. It has 1 power, 1 toughness. When Golgari Thug is put into a graveyard from play, put target creature card in your graveyard on top of your library, and it has Dredge 4. Looping Narcomoebas is a tried and true strategy if you're playing a sort of grindy, aggressive matchup. Golgari Thug blocks for days. You can do Thug, Narcomoeba, whoop, and then dredge it and get your Narcomoeba back. Then you block with the Narcomoeba, you bring the Thug back, and so it's a really great way to stave off some of these aggressive decks like humans or spirits. You can sometimes cast it. I have cast it and then sacrificed it for bridge triggers and legacy. It's a way to deal with Containment Priest. Because Containment Priest does not stop you from making zombies, and so taking your 1/1 and turning it into 3 or 4 2/2 is very much a strategy. I have also just beat people with a Thug. There are times in Vintage where you're playing the mirror, both of you slam a turn 1 ley line, and you're like, all right, let's do it.
Mediocre beats.
5% of your life total.
Absolutely. I had another incident yesterday where there was a young man on Is It Phoenix who proceeded to hit me with 3 surgicals and an Anger of the Gods. And so I started beating him to death with crappy creatures, one of them being this. And then finally I killed him with a hard cast Creeping Chills. So you got to do what you got to do. It ain't always pretty, but it gets you there.
This is one of those cards that, as I was surveying the 600 plus warriors, I've got to, and I was like, I should write that. And I was like, I ain't writing that down. What am I wasting my time for? Like, some things are so on brand, we metagame even our own top 10 lists. Okay? Yeah. That's how that works. But the new artwork in Ultimate Masters is really sweet.
Yeah, I have those 2 in my deck currently.
It's got the new Dev Karen style. If you're familiar with the sort of Jets and Sharks scenario within the political build of the Golgari, it's always sort of been elves versus Medusas. in terms of who's in charge of the guild. And the elves right now are not really in power. And Izoni is the Matka of the Golgari elves, and has that sort of face paint that harkens back to sort of voodoo styling. Looks like Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog a little bit.
Look at this guy.
Did you just West Side Story Ravnica?
Yeah, man. Jets and Sharks.
Jets and Sharks, man. Get it. Get your groove on.
Wow.
It
sounds like a Simic thing more than anything.
The Simic have the most complicated political structure of any of the guilds in Ravnica, like by a wide margin. There's like an x-axis, a y-axis, and a z-axis of what political affiliation.
Which you can read a little bit about in the art book, which is a fascinating read.
The Golgari are more simplified. It's more like, what are you? I'm on your side.
Snap your fingers. Snap your fingers. Ruben, what's your number one?
We've had a lot of fun here today, folks. We've had a lot of fun with our goblins, with our humans, with our, various creature types of various different kinds. We've had a lot of fun with Pro Tour winners. A lot of fun with cards that are in the cube. But we haven't yet touched on any banned and or restricted cards. And this card, once upon a time, we can harken back to the grand old days and look back and laugh at when Wild Nicottle was on the modern banned list.
What a world.
Wow.
What a world.
What a world.
But there is no denying how powerful and impactful the Wild Nicottle is. Wild Nicottle was a common from Shards of Alara for 1 green mana. It's a cat warrior, and it's a 1/1. It gets +1/+1 as long as you control a mountain, and it gets +1/+1 as long as you control a plains. ZOO, people. Zoo. This is the staple creature of Grove Zoo that Brian Kibler won the Pro Tour with, that Andre Quombora won with the Worlds with Naya Lightsaber. It has been in Naya Burn over its lifespan, various builds of Zoo of all different types. The Jace Zoo that Caleb Durward came out with in the early 2010s, back when Mental Misstep era was around, to be able to attack people and stuff. There's the Lynx Zoo, there's Tribal Zoo, there's all the different kinds of Zoo, and Wild Nicottle is the reason for the season in all of those types of Zoo decks.
December 2011 was wild, y'all. It was nuts. They banned Punishing Fire and Wild Nicottle, and the explanation from Eric Lauer was while there were aggressive decks, control decks, and attrition decks, and combination decks that succeeded, the diversity was not ideal. In particular, the heavy majority of all aggressive decks were Zoo decks. We looked at why other aggressive decks were not played, and after our analysis decided to ban these 2 cards. And okay.
It's really the fetch lands, I think, that pushed us over the top. The ability to get a mountain forest. Okay, so you play that on turn 2, you play that on turn 1. This is now a 2/2 because you have a mountain. You do the same thing next turn. You grab your temple garden, and now you've got a 3/3 for very, very little effort. And you don't really mind hurting yourself, fetching and shocking if you know that you can close out the game fairly quickly. And so when you see this deck get going, and then sometimes you see like recent addictions, like I think it was Gore Clan Rampager, where this put that on this, and the deck kills you at blistering speed. And I remember shortly after it was unbanned, people tried to make it work, and there were little spurts of it, but it never really took off, and it's fine. But just when you think back and you're like, you look at some of the things we've been banning, and it's like, this is way banned. Like, all right,
silly. Justice for Ferocidon. Wild Nicottle was unbanned alongside Bitter Blossom on February 2014.
Sorry, what was it banned?
It was unbanned with
Unbanned alongside Bitter Blossom.
But unfortunately for Aaron, also in February 2014, Deathrite Shaman got banned officially.
Amen.
There you go.
And then in January 2016, 17, they took my Sweet Prince.
But you still have Golgari Thug.
I still do.
So small victories.
You'll always have the Thug. Well, that means...
And I will still have Faithless Looting because it ain't getting banned tomorrow. You heard it here first.
It's getting banned tomorrow.
Okay. I mean, it's on camera now, so...
I mean, whatever. Look, because I know that Aaron's number 2 was higher, because there can only be one option for that higher.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Wild Mikado was my number 1, my number 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I was actually expecting my number. None of y'all got into my number 1 on either of y'all's. All right. That's fine. Look.
Dad's mad.
Look, when I said warrior, I immediately thought of Najila, right? And I was like, okay, cool. Najila's great. And then I went back through the list and stuff and found some other great options. But
I have
first
a
one
card that I'm okay with being number 1. I have one card that isn't on my list that I'm okay with being number 1.
I hope so. And it better be what I'm about to list as my official number 1. Okay? Because later they got to add flavor text. But in Future Sight, cowards can't block warriors. This is it. Boldware Intimidator is my number 1. Yes! Boldware Intimidator is 2 red, 5 generic mana for a 5/5 uncommon giant warrior. One line right there at the top. Cowards can't block warriors. 1 red : target creature becomes a coward until end of turn. Every changeling is a coward. That's right. And red and 2 generic mana, target creature becomes a warrior until end of turn. He can make you a warrior, he can make you a coward, but cowards cannot block warriors.
I love it.
That's an amazing piece of Magic text, just period. Just as a thing in the game that I can say to people, and I love it, and it's great.
I remember the first time I saw this card, I had never heard of it. Like, it had actually been printed previously. And I just assumed it was like an unthing or like a commander set card. Like, I didn't know this was actually, like, this was in a standard legal set, right?
Yeah, it was in Morning Tide. Well, it was in Future Sight to start with. It was
on Future
Sight.
Sight.
And it just blew my mind. I was like, is this real? Like, this just sounds like parody. But it's taken over. It's become a thing. And God bless it.
It's fantastic. And they added flavor text that was perfect. Now everyone knows what you are. That's just...
I really wish that there were at least one creature that had... I wish that they'd reprint a version of Norin the Wary.
Who's also a warrior.
Which is also a warrior, that it was also a coward.
Yeah.
So I would like for them to print one creature that has creature type coward. I think that would be kind of hilarious.
That'd be dope. But that was my official number 1. I couldn't think of any more warrior than that.
And that's the only one. It was close to my top 10 list. I didn't put it on there. But it's the only one that I thought was like, you know what, that would be a choice number 1.
Very, very nice. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was our top 10 warriors. You will see them on the screen now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you.
Move here to our final slide. So I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and Cardamajigs.com, presenting Cupamajigs. My co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bresler, you guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that helps people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes or Spotify. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.